I was hanging out in 2017 at a place called the Sequoia National Park. And the National Park Service had hired me to be an artist in residence at the Sequoia National Park. So they flew me out there and put me up in a cabin in the mountains. And my job was to write songs and to do shows in the campgrounds. That's what they wanted me to do for a month. That's what I did. Now, the cabin, I should say, don't think like jacuzzi and, blenders and cable TV. This was a real cabin. There was like a family of possums living underneath the sink. And I was sharing, the bedroom with a couple of raccoons, and it was that kind of thing. No power, nothing, none of that. No water. But anyway, I was wandering around the park one day doing my thing. I'm hiking around. I'm supposed to write songs. So I came upon this beautiful grove of sequoia trees. And it was a magnificent grove. And in the middle of it was a sort of the centerpiece of this grove was a tree called the Colonel Charles Young tree. And easily the trunk was as wide as this room. It was gigantic. So I know my American history, I'm a history major. But I never heard of Colonel Young, so I started reading up on him, the little signs they had about Young and stuff. And it turned out Colonel Young was the first African American to graduate from West Point. This was an amazing accomplishment for the time, because no one had never allowed that before. And they tried everything they could to have him not graduate. The other cadets, for 4 years, none of them would speak to him. They wouldn't talk to him. Pulled a lot of really nasty, evil pranks on him. His professors would give him different tests, much harder tests, hoping that he would fail. But he got through it. Became a great officer in the American Army. And his soldiers just really loved him, both white and black, because his first goal was to accomplish the mission, of course, but to also bring the soldiers home safely. That's what he thought he would. That's what he wanted to do. He graduated a full colonel, ended his career as a full colonel. Had he been white, he would have been a major general for sure. But as it was, he got to be colonel. Even becoming colonel, the New York Times in New York, you'd think they would be kind of supportive of this, or a progressive newspaper. They were in uproar that a black man would be commissioned a colonel in the Army. But anyway, at the end of his life, they gave him one more job. They made him commandant of the Sequoia National Park. Now, in those days, the Army ran these national parks. Sequoia National Park was a joke at that time. It was being run over by all these gangs of lumberjacks who would come in and cut down these trees, haul them out of the park without any permits, without any support, and they would make tons of money by doing this. Several of the lumber companies behind these gangs had senators in their pockets. They were paying the senators not to stop this. So Young got in there to the park. He had like 5 soldiers to patrol this whole park. The first thing he knew he had to do was to stop them from cutting down the sequoias, or we're not going to even have a park. So there's these crazy stories about this guy. How do you stop a gang of several dozen armed thugs? These guys came in guarding these lumberjacks with guns and knives and chains, and there was a lot of them. They'd come into this park down the roads and just cut the trees like they wanted. So Young, you had to stop that first. He only had 5 soldiers. So he went to the very, very root of the problem right off the bat. He would hear them coming down into the park, hear this happening. He'd kind of hide in the bushes, and when he got, say, from here to the wall over there across the street, he would sort of amble out of the bushes. He sort of turned his jacket back, and he had 2 .45 pistols. He would tell them to stop, to go home, and no one will get hurt. It wouldn't make any trouble for him. You just got to stop, turn around, go home, and this is over. The guys, of course, these thugs, they started yelling back at him. They threatened to lynch him. They threatened to hang him, called him all kinds of names. But then Young, after they were kind of spent their verbal anger, he said, okay, yeah, you guys can lynch me. There's, 50 of you and one of me. But which one of you, and he pulled back his jacket, which one of you wants to make the first step? Which one of you wants to take that first step towards me? And of course, this just freaked out these guys, these cowards, these bullies, and they left. That wasn't the end of the story, though. The senators heard about this. The lumber companies heard about it. They put pressure on the senators to put pressure on Colonel Young to stop this. Colonel Young wouldn't stop it. They threatened his wife. They threatened his kids. They firebombed his cabin. They threatened to kill all his soldiers, but he stood his ground. And eventually, he saved the sequoias. So there I was underneath this beautiful sequoia tree, reading this story about this fantastic human being, thinking, okay, I'm here to write songs. I need to write a song right now about this. No question about that. I got to write a song right now. So I was thinking, okay, God, give me an idea. Give me a hook. Give me a central idea to write this song about. And for some reason, I didn't think anything about Colonel Young or sequoias or anything. All I could think of was in big, big letters in my head was the Ramones. The Ramones. I couldn't stop thinking about the Ramones at this moment in this wilderness. This punk rock pioneers from Queens. And so then I started thinking, wow. I started thinking about the Ramones. The Ramones, the very first tour Jason and the Nashville Scorchers ever made was in 1982, opening for the Ramones in Texas in 1982. The whole state, we opened for the Ramones. We learned a lot, mostly how to dodge trash and beer bottles being thrown at us, and that was the truth. So anyway, yeah, I started writing this song about the Ramones and about that experience, and came up with this. And I'm quite proud, folks, that this is the only song in the whole world, to my knowledge, that has these two words in it, the Ramones and God. This is called God Bless the Ramones. Of 82, we got a call from this New York dude. He had heard of the Nashville Scorchers, busting doors and lighting torches. This guy offered us a Texas tour, guaranteed to make us less obscure. It was opening for the Ramones, you see, in the Texas state of Missouri. And though we had no master plan, no amps at work, or a running van, we said yes and away we went. With $50 past due rent, we drove to Beaumont, Texas first, where all those punks would quench their thirst on bands like Killing Joke and Black Flag, and bartenders all in drag. God bless the Ramones. They never made much money. Those folks either hated them or thought that they were funny. Oh, God bless the Ramones. They never sold their souls to U.S. corporate radio and all that it controls. Dee Dee was the first we met, and Jeff couldn't afford bass strings yet. So Dee Dee gave us extra strings, Ryder beer, and chicken wings. Then we opened up the show. There was so much we didn't know. Those Texas punks bombarded us with bottles of beer and vile stuff. God bless the Ramones. They never sold their souls to the U.S. corporate radio, all that it controls. Loves the Ramones with posters of them in their homes. And that t-shirt that bankers wear on weekends when they drink and dare. But no one's left from that first band to take a stand, take it in, or make a stand. And all those years and all those miles they barely spoke and rarely smiled. 10,000 shows they gutted through. For a small group of us who knew they were the first and they're still the best. Stand the punk rock test. God bless the Ramones. They never made much money. Those folks never heard of them or thought that they were funny. Oh, God bless the Ramones. They never sold their souls to the U.S. corporate radio and all that it controls. God bless the Ramones. They never made much money. Those folks either hated them or thought that they were funny. control.